Hi everyone, we are glad that you have joined us for yet another episode of Tuesday Connect. My name is Pastor Sam, and today we have a very interesting topic. But first, allow me to introduce some of the guys that we're going to be discussing this with. So on my right, I have
Gideon Kadi. Gideon with an E. G-E-D-I. Gideon.
That's Gideon.
Gideon.
All right, sorry for another day. And to my left,
one and only, father of one, husband of one,
Baba Gigi.
Baba Gigi mwenyewe,
Ramson. To be honest, Rams, you are the first person I heard with that name. Ramson. Maybe at some point you'll tell us where you got that name from, so that guys can feel free to pirate and to steal.
I think his name is a pirated version of the Ramptons.
Hey.
Samson with an R.
It was a typo. Samson, hey,
most likely ransom, Samson,
Ramson.
Ramptons.
Yeah. Anyway, and lastly,
The one and only Baraka.
that Baraka name is not one and only.
we expect double blessings. You can't be Baraka the one
I
and
know we
only.
have one Baraka, it is the connect.
Okay, you're right about that. So that's the team we're going to be discussing about, and as I said, we have an interesting topic, and the topic is, already alluded to it earlier, it's pirating or piracy. Pirating actually means a whole different thing altogether.
If you're in Campo, you're
Campo, yeah.
pirating is
Is that, oh, not that one. So, piracy. But first, before we get into that topic, allow me to ask, the guys who I'm with here, what are some of the things that you guys watch? What are some of what do you do for entertainment? Let me just ask it that way. Are you a movie person, series, music? What do you guys do?
I listen to a lot of music. I watch documentaries, I watch movies. Yeah. So have I watched a movie that's pirated? I think, yeah, I have. Have I listened to music maybe that's pirated? Yes, I have. Yeah.
I'm just
We'll come to that.
That makes him a pirate. All caps.
Indeed, but we are coming to that. But what do you do for fun yourself?
For me, I sleep, and I'm an adrenaline kind of person. So as far as entertainment, watching, reading, I'd say some of the movies, I'd watch a series or two, maybe. Right now I'm not watching any in particular, but yeah, so maybe an occasional movie here. Recently I watched Conan the Barbarian. So it was a movie that came out when I was still young. So I saw it on Netflix the other day and I was like, wow, never watched this thing. So I couldn't remember the storyline, so I watched it again.
Wow, Conan the Barbarian. I want to say I like that, but I've not watched it, so I'll be lying.
When you do a Rambo.
Yeah, I watched those ones. So maybe Kadu?
Well, I'm not really a watchy person. There's a word like that, not watch. Like watchy.
Watchy.
But I was just thinking, actually all my life, I think I've watched less than 20 complete seasons of a series. I am not really I'm not a TV person. The only thing I watch on TV is news. When I'm idle, because I also get content on Twitter, I basically just watch sports. Yeah.
Personally, I'm also not big on movies, and I think I've shared it many times before. I am more of a music person, so I listen to a lot of music. So I do music, and then a lot of outdoor things. Though I do watch news, read the newspaper, and read magazines. I also do read magazines, from time to time.
Does that disqualify any of you guys to speak about entertainment? You're not watching a lot.
You see, some of us can entertain ourselves without necessarily looking at external...
Okay.
Yeah.
You
But
pirate
music
your
is
own
there. I mean,
content.
I can pirate
entertainment is
myself.
not, and entertainment is not just movies or series, because I said music. So it's the audio side of things, not the visual, but the audio side of things. I would watch a movie, but it's very rare. Like in the last 5 years, I've probably watched only like two. Could be honest.
You watch even Jesus movie of late with your kids or anything?
Jesus movie. Very short episode. I don't count the short episodes on YouTube.
Uh,
Yeah. So, second question for me is, how do you usually access this content? And how do you usually access the content that you like
I think first, to be
for
honest,
entertainment? Yeah.
A lot of great content out here is not easily accessible in terms of financial accessibility. If you are to maybe watch sports, have the full subscription that allows you to watch rugby, cricket, all these things going on, movies, all the music and music content that is provided online and all these things. If you are to be able to say that you can access all those things, a lot of those things are way out of financial league, which I would say most of people are at. So one of the places where I access my content that is for free, obviously, is YouTube. YouTube has a lot of great documentaries over there. There's one I watch often, the one about world's deadliest roads. It's a very fascinating one, and for construction and stuff. But it's only for so long. But there are many other places that you can access movies that are not necessarily legitimate or platforms that are known by everyone. Yeah.
myself, mostly it's just Netflix. Netflix, occasional movie on sometimes my wife has this habit of sometimes scrolling through YouTube, and then sometimes we land on a movie, a Chinese, and we will watch it. And yeah, sometimes we find interesting things to watch there. So yeah, mostly Netflix, but YouTube sometimes.
See, like a Chinese movie.
Yeah, but subtitles. You watch the subtitles. So
You clearly you need entertainment.
those guys are entertaining enough. Even simple activities like just carrying water is entertaining to watch a Chinese carry water.
But they do have some awesome, I think, clips on YouTube, especially the DIYs.
Oh,
They have some very crazy DIY
That's
ideas
not entertaining.
on YouTube.
Man,
Why would you watch a DIY for entertainment?
Bruh, you can watch that thing for hours. You know, this
half
the
I think
creativity.
Yeah, actually
Wow.
half, I think 3/4 of entertainment on YouTube is DIYs and over house
It's not
overhauls
entertainment,
and
it's
such.
content. It's not entertaining content, it's educative content. DIY is not entertaining, it is educative.
No, it can't be entertaining to see how a house
If you are
goes
entertained by
to
DIYs, then we need to.
It's not mutually exclusive. It can be both educative and entertaining.
entertaining.
Of course, you lie to yourself the whole time. The reason why you justify hours on it is I might actually be able to do that thing. Of course, you never end up doing any of those things. But yeah, so YouTube is one of those places to access. You said you access them on Netflix. You said YouTube as well. Yeah. Kadu.
Well, you see, I was just thinking about what Baraka said. So, supply and demand. So for sports, there's a time when there was only one big supply of sport in this country. And sport used to be premium. It used to be very expensive. But right now, man, there's content everywhere. To the point that some of it is free. So there's a lot of free content, free streaming sites, that once in a while I will peep into.
For 90 minutes.
90 minutes. By the way, interesting.
8 minutes.
Interestingly, by the way, even if a game is being watched, and you go to Twitter, right, and search for that game, like Jana Man City was playing who? Man City versus Palace, live, at that given point, you'll find like 50 people streaming it for free. Yeah, so we watch. I mean, I don't remember the last time I actually paid for
football.
For sports, but I pay for internet.
So
freebies.
you better be creative. Yeah. So it's interesting. The reason I'm asking that question is because I know for a long time, like the most the usual or the most common thing that used to be there for Kenyan entertainment. There's a time when, you know, the 50 Bob guys, the 50 Bob movie guys. Man, those are the guys who kept us going.
There were 5 bob then.
Prison Break.
Eh?
When it was Prison Break and
Bruh.
Wait,
Criminal
wait.
Minds.
You say there are 5 bob.
There were 5 bob or 10 bob then.
You bought a movie for 5 bob?
Bruh, where?
Where?
No,
No,
the
that-
movie places, the movie shops
No,
where.
you would
in
go
the-
with
in
your
the
own
hood.
flash and then get it for 5,
No,
10
I'm talking
bob.
about movies in the hood.
Oh, you're talking about
guys
the
who
places
used
where
to-
you enter
yeah,
the
yeah.
cinema.
Oh.
Yeah,
With
Oh,
even a DJ,
yeah.
guy who DJ the movie for you. Huh? So you don't have to think much. He DJs
Yeah,
the
there's a
whole.
commentary.
Now we're not talking about that, but we're talking about the 50 bob guy. You know, you go, he burns a whole series for you on a CD, or a movie, the latest movie.
It's
It comes out
50
like this.
If it's his CD, it is 30, I think, if it's your CD.
No, it's usually 10 bob if it's on series, I think, or something. Okay, yeah.
10 bob. I mean, how do they make them? Oh, anyway.
Okay, where do you guys live?
So, I mean, there used to be a time when that was very common. I don't see a lot of that these days, but I know it wasn't just, you know, in the movie series. We used to access content, many other kinds of content through these guys, you know, the music as well. We would do it, softwares, you know, we would go to the guy on the cyber and he would, whatever software you want, he would get it for you. You know, and I wonder, was it just a Kenyan thing? You know, because I know out there in the West or some other countries in the world, they are very strict, you know, about access of content to ensure that, I guess, the people who have created this content are able to, you know, benefit from it. But in these countries, like, if to suggest to someone that, hey, you know, you need to pay for a content, it's something that is absurd, it's ridiculous. It's like Kenyans don't ever think, you know, like that. Do you think it's a Kenyan problem? Like how we have grown up, how we have been culturalized and socialized, we don't actually value paying money, you know, to access either digital content, movies, softwares. Do you think it's a Kenyan thing?
I think piracy, just like with every other social habits, have an aspect of the way most people do things. This is just how we do things. And so there are people who will actually perhaps pirate content, or they have never had a category for these things can be bought or are bought. So I would say to that end, there's a way in which it is a Kenyanness in a way in there is to it, but many of us have grown up to doing some of these things. Perhaps there has been no category for. Is this right or wrong? That's not a question we ask. So I would say to that end, it could be a Kenyan problem, but I don't think Kenya is the only country that pirates, obviously.
Obviously not, because even most of the streaming links that you'll see online, most of them are not Kenyan. In fact, I doubt there is a Kenyan streaming link for most of these videos and movies and series. Most of them are actually, you know, something that you're accessing that was built by somebody in Asia or somebody in Europe or someone else.
I would say Kenyans are like third, fourth tier consumers of pirated content. Yeah.
For me, I'm looking at it like this. You know, the way there's a category of Kenyans that feel nothing about trashing the environment.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you've seen that. You know, you're driving, whatever, a guy just opens the window, throws out, and they feel zero about what they're doing. Yeah? And yet there are the other Kenyans who, that acts them really badly. You feel like also in this issue, there are those guys who feel absolutely zero about it, and the other guys who feel like, yo, I think we need to have a conversation collectively, about this issue, so we can upgrade ourselves. Because, especially, let's leave the people of the world altogether. I'm thinking about Christians. Is it stretching it for us to look at piracy as some form of theft? As believers? Are we blowing things out of proportion by saying, look, every time you go and download a movie from that movie guy, he skumas you a whole series. you just robbed the guys who made that movie. And I know there's some people who come up with arguments. They say, Africa is not their market, so they were not even seeking to monetize from this continent anyway. So I'm enjoying. I will.
Sisi ni byproduct. Sisi tunakula byproduct.
Since they never considered us, or a movie or whatever. I mean, we all come, and maybe we can talk about what are some of the justifications that people give. But as Christians, this is the first question. As Christians, do you think it's blowing it out of proportion to call piracy just what it is?
Yeah. I actually think it's not. Though that's not how we see it. As Baraka said, we didn't grow up with that mindset. But for a Kenyan, I think personally, it took me a while before I actually acknowledged that this being when I was in campus is when I finally realized, by the way, piracy is stealing. Because I didn't yet have the concept of intellectual property rights. Like somebody, when they build something creative, it's not just to be shared and anyone can use it. But I think it took me until campus, that's when I realized, by the way, there is something about this intellectual property rights. And when somebody builds it and creates it, there is a place for us to pay for
Protect,
that.
yeah.
So
Not
it
violate.
needs to be protected. Though I can say, yeah, but it was difficult because when I was growing up, and I think I had the testimony later on from a local musician, him saying, there was a time in Kenya when you couldn't, the supply chain was not that good, and you couldn't access it unless, you gave people in River Road your song. They would pirate it and then they would make it, popular in Kenya. So I think, I think it is theft, but it is not the kind of theft that we've grown up understanding this is actually theft.
There are justifications. Would you say that there are reasons that, quite honestly, look good that people give for doing that, to justify, piracy?
I think first, we don't see it as theft. It doesn't mean it's not. We don't see it as theft because, if I steal your phone, I know I stole Sam's phone. So there's an aggrieved party. But here, look, I am dealing with ghosts. Who am I stealing from? So even if I said, I think that's why we don't see it as theft. But the fact that you can access somebody's content and just grab it for free, that makes it theft. But again, thinking as a believer, there's also the issue of sin numbing our conscience, where you're so used to sin, mpaka you're no longer bothered. So maybe the first time you downloaded a movie, you watched it, but then after that you went and confessed. But then now you are accessing that content and feeling nothing. Could be a point of just how our consciences have died because we basically bought into the whole, look, who cares?
Piracy also is a coping mechanism in a way. In a country or an environment where financial resources are scarce, platforms for entertainment are scarce, resources that a student perhaps would need in a school, internet, bundles, books to read, for example, online, sources of entertainment that they will need with limited resources. That by itself lends itself naturally to then what are ways in which, actually it's people would argue for, this is a better management or stewardship of the resources that I have.
Yeah.
Instead of, paying so much money for this and this. And so that, just like with many other things that we struggle with here and there, we can cope whichever way we would, but it's not necessarily to mean that that is the right way, but it is one way that someone would actually say, this is how I am actually trying to manage the resources I have. So that if I've paid this much for internet, let me now
Utilize internet well.
Yeah.
Paid for it.
In theology, it is called prevenient grace. God causing his rain to fall on both the wicked and the righteous.
I think another way we we can convince ourselves it's okay to pirate is when we think of accessibility. You know, I think of myself when we were growing up. You know, getting content was not easy. Yeah, especially when the internet was not there. So somebody has produced content, but by the time I'm able to go and watch, you know, an Iron Man movie or something, how do I even get it? Unless I wait for a tape to be shipped. But currently, yeah, so, or for now, a lot of things are online. But it's not always that I'm in a place where internet is good and sufficient for streaming movies and such. So I'd rather buy from that 50 bob guy who will ban it, or I don't want to pay for internet. I'm trying to be prudent with my money so I don't pay for internet. So when I'm at home and I need entertainment, my solution is let me buy it from somebody who copies it. It's accessible to me. I can use it. The one about, you know, or the one, we are not the target market. So us guys are just watching it on the side.
As in, they never thought about us. So are we to be deprived? You know, hata sisi ni watu, we shall still watch.
Yeah. Or even the expense of trying. I have test for something on DC. I have test for something. So there's Disney, and they are locking their content. They're not allowing it everywhere. And then there's something else on Netflix that I want to follow. And then there's something else on another channel. So how will I access it? Or, you know, they don't create content for area. I'm a fan of Blacklist, and I'm currently stuck at season 7 because season 8 and 9 is showing. But it's not on
You should have
Netflix.
spoke to Kadu before.
What is that? What is that?
So you see, there is a sense of, man, why don't I just go online and watch season 8 and 9 of Blacklist instead of waiting for Netflix? I don't know when they'll even bring season 8.
One of the ways in which because I'm an ex pirater, ex. Kadu X.
Expired.
One of the ways I used to justify, even as a believer, it was back then before the days for the Spotify, the Apple Music, and so on. I would have music, you know, some of the hip hop or whatever music, worship, and so on, and I would burn that stuff and give it to guys, you know, and I would be like, look, I'm promoting the gospel. I'm promoting. It's the message that I am spreading everywhere. So I would care not about the artist. I would care not about the copyright things and whatever. I would be like, look, consider the greater good here. You know, this is my evangelism tool. Somebody is listening to rubbish. I want to give them clean music. So
You think I just say listening?
And besides, they called it gospel music.
exactly.
See, gospel.
Freely have
Freely
you
you've received.
given.
Freely give.
Really give. There you have it. You know, it made sense. It made so much sense. You know, but of course, this ways there are other ways of mitigating that, and maybe we can get to that. You know, what are some of the? What do you feel like? I feel like there used to be a lot of justification in the past, but things have moved on quite a bit, even on this area, so that there are a lot of helps these days to help somebody who is struggling because maybe they're used to copying, robbing, taking other people's stuff. What are the helps that you see available today that can help, especially a believer, walk a more narrow path in this issue?
I think one of them is to make use of the student accounts, because most of the people who find themselves in that space where I don't have much money are mostly students. So I'd say make use of the student accounts, and you know, you go to Spotify, they have a student account. Most of, you know, Windows has a student version of it. Most of them, and so you would be amazed about some of the things that are just given for students' use.
Of course, the student packages are limited, and the problem is our appetite is over here, and then you're telling somebody to come down over here legally. I mean, how do you?
I've noticed,
Yeah.
I've noticed that there are, so people, content creators, have actually realized that, look, whether I like it or not, someone will access this content and it will be pirated. So what some of them are doing is actually giving for free some of that content, like I discovered. So I mean, if I stood before God and he asked me, were you a pirate? I think the one thing I would be guilty of is books. Because I access books online for free. So these books are super expensive. But then like one of the sites that I use, I just recently learned that it's actually legit. Yeah, that they were actually taken to court, and there was a whole litigation around it, and yeah, it's legit. And even the books that they distribute for free, somehow, I don't know how they're paid for. And so there's a lot of that. If you just look keenly enough, you will find legit places that are offering this content for free to cater for people like students who can access it.
Yeah. I think for guys who are students, especially if you're looking for content, sometimes believers also are looking for content. I'd say, look, and I was surprised. There was a time there was a whole course being offered, and just I decided, you know what, I usually hear of scholarships. Let me write an email. So they said there, you can ask for a scholarship here. So I wrote an email and said, hey, I can't afford this, but would you please offer it to me? This is my country. And, boom, I got a message, an email later on, and it was saying, go ahead. That's the content will now be accessible. Use this code. And it was now available to me. So especially on content around the gospel and Christianity, I'd say, man, there's a lot of places that are willing to offer it to you, knowing that their main reason is understanding that they want to spread the gospel. So if you can say...
In other words, you have not because you ask not.
Yeah, there are sometimes you didn't ask, but that's really in the area of books and literature. So I'd say on other spaces, I'd say two things. I'd say the first one, I'd say tame your appetites, because I think eventually when you look at the entertainment content, it's too much. And some of it, when, Disney is trying to keep theirs to themselves, DC might be trying something on the side. Netflix have their own platform for something. And so you have an interest in almost all these things. There is a movie that's produced by these guys, and then there's something here and there's something here. And I think taming your appetites in terms of as far as entertainment goes might be helpful in saying, you know what, there's this much entertainment that I might want to consume, but I will I'll find contentment in just this amount of entertainment, so that it also reduces the temptation to have to, access stuff that is not necessarily in means that are right. So that's one. The other
Let me just pause there. I thought that was a very interesting point. Tame your appetite, because I feel like sometimes we're even guilty of two offenses. The first offense is the kind of content that we even pirate. It's not even content we should be watching in the first place. It's messed up. It's messed up content that is destroying your life. Like God is not even happy with it. Secondly, you're stealing. So you're guilty on two accounts. You stole that content. Guilty. That content was bad for you.
Your sentence is multiplied.
So it's very funny. Yeah.
The other one I'd say, look for alternatives. This especially is in the area of software. Being in Campo, I realized, man, there is a sense of, I want this Photoshop thing. How do I get it? And what's the cost of getting it? Or I want this video editing tool, or I want this. And the temptation was great. I want to do something. I want to explore a gift I've discovered recently. But I can't do that. So I think there is a place for you to actually consider and try and find alternatives. For example, for those who are struggling with Windows, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a screen that says activate Windows.
This window is not, what does they say?
I've forgotten the last line, but it's usually an activate, and then the screen becomes black at the back and all that. And I'd say, man, sometimes it's, for some people, it's basic needs. They just need to watch a movie, type a document and all that. Ubuntu will do for you some of those stuff. So I'd say consider alternatives if you are into video editing. Maybe finding something that might not give you all the power that Photoshop will give you, but it will give you a certain capability. I remember at one time
Photoshop is not free?
No.
Using
using a free one.
Just go and install it.
If you're using a
Go and install it.
yeah,
Someone is
so, yeah, so instead of finding a crack for a software, just,
Find an alternative, yeah. And they're very good free. You know, there are people who have recognized that there are people who need to use these tools, but they don't have the money. So they've come up with free alternatives. Maybe some of them are even activists and so on. So they've come up with free alternatives. Use those. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah.
And if we were to even think of a biblical case, obviously the scriptures invite us also to be mindful of others,
Yeah.
to have concern for other people, not just to think about myself and my entertainment, my getting my needs met. So if we were to think of the person behind the content that I'm consuming, could this be their livelihood? Could it be that my accessing it is coming at a cost to someone else? Maybe actors who invest their years in school studying and years preparing content, musicians who put in time, putting together groups of people to sing and produce content. And perhaps the streaming platforms are their ways in which they are able to earn their gainful income through what they're putting out there. So being mindful of that as well would help you think beyond just your consumption, also think who is producing this as well.
Wow.
and sometimes guys
It's powerful.
say that, you know what, I'm pirating what is, that guy already know he's sorted. If I pirate, a match, Man City over something, match, those guys are already paid, the industry is already thriving, so I'm not really affecting the industry. But in some way there's also the place of accountability before God, that you stand before God. It's not, yes, there's being mindful of the other person, but there's also your accountability. So I think piracy, you also need to bring the seriousness of seeing it, if it's a stealing issue, there's a holiness issue to it aspect. So this is a direct violation of what God has called you to do. So I think it's helpful for you to see the gravity of it. It might help you because I think it takes some painful steps for you to move away from piracy. So I think for you to have the motivation to do that, sometimes it's at looking at the gravity of what that you're actually doing.
Just listening to the both of you, people doing these things, first of all, there's a hunger that they need to satisfy. There is a need for being in the know, being in the loop. We could say a need for significance. And I think these are legitimate needs, but we're looking for the solution in the wrong things. I think there is that hunger that makes you go after some of these things cannot be satisfied in God, in Christ. And so maybe our starting place would be to go back to the source. And that way, He can also help us, reprogram our worldviews, and how we view things and how we treat things.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to read, I guess, in conclusion, a Bible verse here. I think it's Baraka who took us back to the scriptures. What does the scripture say about this? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28 says this: anyone who has been stealing,
Still no longer.
Pirating.
amplified version maybe would have pirating, the whole list. Anyone who's been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. The very thing, I guess, one of us here said, ask yourself, this thing, do I need it? And if the answer is yes, then work for it. Let's not take shortcuts. Let's not take the easy way out. As Kadu is saying, if you take the easy way out, you could be feeding into a greed that you have. But if you commit yourself to working hard, to getting the things that you feel like you need, then even the greed shall be cut off, because things that you do not need, then you will not try to access, because I don't actually need that thing. But if you need it, then work for it. That's what we're saying. Let's not steal, because not only are you harming the other person, but you also shall have a case to answer, when you stand before God, because it is He who said, thou shalt not do these things. So let's take these things seriously. It's true, as a community, As a people here in Kenya, we don't think much of it, just like we don't think much of trashing, or some people don't think much of trashing. But let's look at the impact that has. If everyone was to go about that way, then our jobs would never be secure. Our properties would never be secure, because if anybody feels like they want it, they would be coming for it. Let us think deeply about these things, and let us have a clean and a clear conscience before God. And there's nothing as sweet as enjoying something that you worked for. So let's push ourselves into that level. It has already been said, there are many ways you can get things legitimately. Seek to find out what those ways are. If it's in the music, if it's in the books, if it's in the movies, if it's in the matches, ask yourself, what is the legitimate, most convenient, maybe fairly priced way I can access this thing. Do your due diligence, but don't take the shortcut, because then otherwise nobody would be able to say in the end of the day that I was ignorant, because ignorance is never an excuse, and especially when the matters are so clear that they are wrong. All right, for Tuesday Connect,
Yeah.
we're out. And do not pirate this copy.
Like Piracy.
Don't pirate this show. Don't pirate this show.
Of the Caribbean.
No, this one you can pirate.
Please cut, spread, share the link to your friends. Share widely. Don't sell. Whatever you do,
You're a pirate.
whatever you do, don't sell. Do not charge for these copies. Yeah. So thank you for tuning in. See you next episode. Bye.